Hey everybody, it's Paul from Alexandria Knife Sharpening. So TSPROF was kind enough to send me this Pioneer Sharpener. It's one of their newest sharpeners, and it's also their lowest priced sharpener. They're all very, very high quality sharpeners. But what I wanted to do was, a couple of you have reached out and said, hey, Paul, you have a professional knife sharpening shop. How would something like this fit into your repertoire of sharpening? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Like, how would something like this fit in? And I used to have something similar to this, and I sold it. Now, I mostly sold it because I went way overboard, and this is kind of important to keep in mind as a professional sharpener, as opposed to like a person who's just sharpening their own knives as a collector and things. So my first sharpener was a Wicked Edge. It was the very first one I ever got. It was a manual sharpener similar to this, except for you sharpen both sides of the knife at the same time, taking alternate strokes. The reason I sold it was mostly because, one, I didn't use it a whole lot, but there were times I still did reach out and grab it. But I had like $1,300 invested in that sharpener, and for the most part, it was sitting under a table all the time. Another one of the sharpeners you guys, as new sharpeners, start out with a lot is the Work Sharp Ken Onion Elite. A fantastic little sharpener. If you're just starting out a sharpening business, I would say that this is a great entry-level sharpener too, and it also can start teaching you the basics of belt sharpening. Now, what are the downsides? Well, one thing I don't love about this machine is that it basically is set up for the most part to only do edge trailing sharpening. And what you'll find is that most sharpeners, once they have a lot of experience, do the majority of their stuff edge leading because it's faster. And there's also some out there who tell you that your belts last longer and things like that. For a new sharpener, and this is important, a lot of sharpeners starting out are a little nervous of these things, okay? They're a little nervous of sharpening Japanese knives. One, because what do we know? They're expensive, okay? You're talking knives that are easily, $250, $350. I've sharpened ones that are in the thousands of dollars range. And it's one of the reasons I do have multiple machines. But if you want a really safe way to sharpen something like this, like a beautiful Japanese knife, I like this a lot more than I like the Ken Onion Work Sharp sharpener. And I'll tell you, here's the main reasons why. One, the steel on this is harder. Japanese knives have harder steel than a lot of your Western knives. And if you've ever tried to do your first Japanese knife, when you get it, you're like, why is this taking so long? And you realize the steel's really hard. Well, what are some of the differences between these two? Well, these use belts. This uses diamond stones, okay? Diamonds, as we all know, it's the hardest substance on earth. The next closest is CBN abrasives, which I love too, and you guys know, you hear me talk about them all the time. But that's one reason I like this, is because these are diamonds. And the great thing about this is you're going to be able to do a ton of knives before you ever wear out these diamond sharpeners, as opposed to belts, which are a constant ongoing cost. You have to keep buying them. And if you do a lot of Japanese knives, you're going to go through your belts sooner because they are significantly harder, okay? So the other thing is Japanese knives in general, a lot of times are sharpened on flat stones. So they have a flat profile. This is going to give you a convex profile because you're sharpening it on a slack belt. Now, is that bad? Is it good? I'm not opposed to convex grinds. I don't really love it for kitchen cutlery, though. I find it to be better for hunting knives and utility knives or everyday carry knives. I don't love it so much for kitchen knives. And the one reason is if you keep doing something convex over time, the sides build up further and further and further. And if someone's going to hone that knife, if it's a cook, a kitchen cook who's honing his knife regularly, that buildup of the sides sticking out can keep them from getting a good hone on their knives. So eventually you're going to have to whack those sides down and make them flat again so you can sharpen the knife. Because the more you do something convex, the more that convex gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So this is flat. So you're never going to run into that. So that's another reason why I like this sharpener for something like this. And the other thing is belts generally go pretty fast. They can remove a lot of material. So if we were to put a very aggressive belt on here, we could remove way more material from this Japanese knife than maybe we even want to too fast. So I think this is a great thing for a new sharpener starting out. This is a fantastic sharpener for a home chef that wants to sharpen their own knives. Maybe they don't have a great sharpening service or sharpener nearby they can bring their stuff to. Or the hobby guy who collects knives and wants to sharpen his own knives. This is great. If you don't mind putting in a little bit more time, this thing is awesome. So let's get into it real quick a little bit with, all right, so what does it do? How does it work? What are some of the cool features of it? So TSPROF is definitely known for incredibly great engineered equipment. And one of the very first things I noticed about this, and I have this set, they have little marks down here. I have this set for 15 degrees right now, but they also gave you a digital angle cube, which is nice for checking all of your angles of things. I was blown away with how spot on this was. But the other thing I want to do real quick, I want to show you guys how dull this Japanese knife is. So the customer brought me this in, said it hasn't been sharpened in a while and it's pretty dull. And you can see it's not cutting real well. It is cutting, but you know, it's not push cutting at all. We got no push, and it's slice cutting, but not great. Not like it should be. And I can see quite a few little chips, but no big chips in this knife. All right, so at least we know the status of it. So the first thing you're going to do is just put it in the jig. And this is a perfect size, you know, knife for a jig like this. If you're doing a smaller knife, you can use one. You know, you can clamp it in the middle and you can take the other side off if it's in the way. These are really nice, really precision. And that's the first thing you'll know. Some companies out there have tried to copy what TSPROF has done here. So you'll see very similar things. The problem I've seen with those, and usually they're pretty cheap sharpeners, and unfortunately there's a couple scam ones out there that try and pretend to be high-end sharpeners like a TSPROF, that are just not that good. The mechanics of this knife sharpener, look at this thing, like it flips beautifully and it is so well made and machined that, I mean that's just beautiful. Okay, the other ones I've seen, they don't flip this well, and a lot of times when they flip, they're not even the correct angle. So I wanted to show you the angle cube here. So they have this angle cube that you can put down, and you can zero it out on the top up here. So it looks like you can see that. So you see we're zeroed out there. Now, when you're gonna do a Japanese knife, or really any knife, the first thing you wanna do, if we're gonna match the existing edge angle, we're just gonna mark that bevel with a Sharpie. If they were like, hey, I want it at 15 degrees, you could just set it to 15 degrees. Well, I'm going to grab a higher grit one. We will start with a low, but we're just checking to see how this is working on this particular knife and how close it is with the angle that we're looking for. All right. So I'm going to take my angle cube off now, and I'm going to put it on top up here, and we're going to put this down on the knife. And you can see we're getting 13.7, almost 14 degrees. And you can see it'll vary a tiny little bit here and there. But I have a feeling that this is probably going to be close to around 15, but let's start with 14. All right, so we're at 14 there. And I just want to see what this does to our Sharpie. Right now I'm just looking for the proper angle. So I'm not really concerned about sharpening. I just want to see, is that removing that Sharpie and as much of the bevel as I want to hit. And that looks really good to me. I'm happy with that. So I think we'll go with the 14 degrees. Now this is a cool little feature on this sharpener. It's got what they call a park or a garage or something. And it's just a plastic piece with two little fork things, but you can put it in there. Because I tried another really cheapo brand of one that was similar to this one. And that was the most annoying part. There was nowhere to put the sharpener when I wanted it out of the way. Okay? But this thing, you can park it and then kind of just turn it. So if you got to do other stuff. The other thing, and I'll just bring this up since I mentioned it earlier about the wicked edge. So the wicked edge you sharpened like this, okay? And the knife went in with the end of the knife here and the tip of the knife all the way forward. So you went like this. I had cut myself a couple times on my wicked edge, having reached forward for something and come back and caught the tip of the knife. One thing I like about how TSPROF does it is the blade's going this way, and I don't tend to be doing anything that's making me come in contact with the tip, which it seems to be that's the thing that always gets you, is the tip of the knife. So I like this design also. So I think this is a great design. All right, so we don't need this 1000 grit now. We're gonna start out with a nice low grit, a 150. We wanna raise a burr here, and let's get started sharpening this knife. Now, for stroke wise and options as far as what you can do, some people like to go heel to tip all the way like that. Some people like to do little round motions like this. Both are fine. So if you just want to, do strokes heel to tip, you can do that. If you want to do little round motions like this, that's an option too. And I just want to make sure that this thing isn't putting any marks that I don't want in this finish here. Because I see a couple marks here, but I think they're from the owner. And I just want to make sure they're not from me. Yeah, they're not from me. So those are marks from someone else. Just wanted to be sure. I wanted to make sure that angle wasn't off and that I wasn't marking their knife. So another important thing to check when you're working on an expensive Japanese knife. So our first goal here, as I've mentioned before, if you've ever seen some of my other basic sharpening video, and I have one that talks about the biggest mistake people make is they don't raise a burr on one side. So the very first, most important thing is you got to keep sharpening on one side till you raise a burr. And that burr has to go the whole length of that knife. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to work on this one side until I know that I have a burr. And then once I have a burr, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'm feeling to see if I have a burr. And I'm starting to feel one down here, but not everywhere else. But there is the beginning of a burr down there at the end. I'm just going to give it a flip to take a look here. And you can also, sometimes you'll see the burr too. Especially if you look from the other side. You'll see a little shiny reflected area there. And I'm seeing what I see as a burr. All right, so we're going to start on the other side now. And I'm sorry, I'm having to work right next to the camera, so it's a little hard. I have to, my elbow's kind of tucked in, so it's not easy for me to get the perfect kind of stroke I would normally want to do with something like this. But I'm just going to suffer through it because I want you guys to see this. And this is a pretty aggressive stone, so it won't take too long for this to start getting a burr. Yeah, I think we are just about there. Yep, I feel it. Yep, feel burr the whole way. All right, so now we're going to jump up in grits. We're going to go next to a 600. So I'm going to go back to my other side, and now I'm going to count my strokes because I want to keep things pretty even. All right, so now we're at 600. So that was 20. And now I'm going to do 20 strokes on the other side. All right, so 20 strokes on both sides, and that's feeling pretty good. So now I'm going to go to my next stone. This is my 1000 grit. That was 20. All right, 20. All right, so now let's talk about how we finish this and stropping it. So you can get a leather strop for your TSPROF. And the thing with this is you got to remember, we're not going to go into it. We have to go away. So now we have to be edge trailing because this is leather. So I'm going to work the opposite. I'm going to work from tip to heel, and I'm just going to pull down because you don't want to cut your leather strop on this very sharp Japanese knife. That was 10. All right, so let's park that, and let's pull it out and give it a cut test. Now, other things you could do, you could strap on something else if you wanted. You don't have to strap on here. As you can see over there, I have in front of this, I have my round stropping wheel on a variable speed grinder. That's an option. Let's give this blade a little wipe down. I want to get all that marker off that I put on here. So I just use some high 91% isopropyl alcohol and give that a quick wipe. It also shines it up real nice. You can see it looks great. All right, now let's give it our traditional cut test. So the one thing I love to see with Japanese knives, I always want to see them push cutting. So let's see if it push cuts. Yeah, it sure does. It's push cutting like a champ. And as you can see, I'm working my way up the blade here to see if it's push cutting at the whole length of this blade. So now let's do some slice cutting. And yeah, it is absolutely razor sharp. Whew. So yeah, this knife is good to go back. So absolutely amazing. The TSPROF is a fantastic sharpener. Let me give you a close up of what this edge looks like too, so you can see it. You see, it's a beautiful Beautiful edge there we got on there. All right, so that is the TSPROF Pioneer, and you know, it could definitely work for a lot of sharpeners out there, and no doubt hobby guys, knife collectors, or home cooks that want to have super sharp knives that they can do themselves. This is a fantastic, if not probably one of the very best sharpening devices that you can own. You cannot go wrong with any of the TSPROF models. And for one that's coming in under $400, this one's a great way to get into the game. Hey everyone, it's Paul from Alexander Knife Sharpening, Laser Engraving. I wanted to give you some final thoughts on the TSPROF Pioneer. So let's focus on who is this good for, right? That's a real important thing. So I get a lot of new guys getting into sharpening, just starting out sharpening. And I think this unit is absolutely fantastic for guys that want to start doing expensive knives. So if you want a safe way to start sharpening high-end Japanese knives, high-end EDCs, this is a fantastic thing for you to consider purchasing. Who else would it be good for? If you're thinking of doing mobile sharpening, this is a nice, small, compact unit that you can take mobily with you. Say you get a client that needs you to come inside to do stuff, or you have to sharpen on location. Also great. You don't even need power to be able to sharpen on a location, which is nice. It'd be also a nice backup for if you lose power. So I know a lot of guys that do mobile setups and have cars and vans and different things. Hey, this is something that happens. I've had it happen here in my shop. I had my shop go down one time with an electrical problem, and for 2 days I had to search to try and find a way to be able to sharpen. And here I was running electrical cords from all over other parts of the house. So it's a nice backup to have to powered sharpening systems. It's also great for fixing knives that have way too big of convex sides on them. So if someone's been getting their knives sharpened by someone who's always doing belt style sharpening on it, and you have a kitchen knife with these big giant convexes on it that's not honing well and not doing things well, this is a great way to flatten those sides down and even do a repair to a knife that you don't want to have big giant fat convex sides on them. Less wear and tear on your belts. So if you have to do super steel EDCs, hard Japanese knives, this is a great option. It's going to save your belts a lot longer, because those diamond stones are going to take a beating and they're going to be able to handle all those really hard steels that we see today. It's a really nice, very precision sharpener, and current pricing on this thing is right around $350. I mean, it's everything they do is super high quality. So you will not be disappointed at all. This thing keeps its angles. It is precision, the quality that we expect from TSPROF things at a really good entry-level price. All right, so have a great day, everyone. I hope that helps some of you guys out that might be considering or looking at the TSPROF. Oh, you know what? I forgot one other group. For your knife collectors out there, because I know, and guys that just want to sharpen their own stuff, you know, maybe you're not even interested in a sharpening business like I have, but if you just want to sharpen your own stuff and you want a phenomenal sharpener, then I think the TSPROF Pioneer here is worth your consideration. Now, one other thing to consider, I just want to touch on real quickly. After speaking to my contacts over at TSPROF, Victor said that they recommend that these stones are good for at least about 40 knives. Now, I think they're being extremely conservative. I think you could get more than 40 out of them, especially since I showed you earlier that you don't have to hit every grit level when sharpening a knife. You can do a 3-step process. You can even do a 2-step process. So I think you could easily probably stretch that to 80 or more. But another thing to consider if you're doing it as a business and to make money, as you start making money, you might even want to consider getting even better stones for this sharpening system. And there are many great sharpening stones available for the TSPROF out there. So these are just electroplated diamonds. They will not last forever, but you will get a pretty good long use out of them. But just keep that in mind, that even upgrading these to an even better stone, probably worth considering in the future. Have a great day, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this review. One last thing, I was also able to get TSPROF to give an additional 5% discount. So if you use code ALXSharpen5, you'll get an additional 5% off on a purchase of a TSPROF Pioneer.